Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. This is the weekly news wrap up, the WNW 327 for May 13th, 2016. That's right, Friday the 13th. I know it's an unlucky day, but I still feel lucky. I'm lucky to have you guys tuning in. I want to talk to you about the war threats, the simmering and ongoing war threats around the planet. And I want to start in Eastern Europe, in Romania, of all places. Now, there's a brand new missile defense system that just had a big ribbon cutting that just installed. The U.S. says that it's to protect Europe from an attack from some sort of rogue state. I read between the lines and say, possible Iran missile attack, or some other crazy country that may get their hands on a medium-range missile and fired into Europe somewhere. Who knows? But Russia, who sits on the border there, and Eastern Europe and Western Russia and Eastern Europe is upset. They say that it is a direct threat to them, a direct threat to the global and regional security, end quote, a direct threat to global and regional security. Russia also says that this action by the U.S. is destructive action, end quote. Now, one Russian commenter even said that the missile deployment, and I quote, might even accelerate the slippery slope into a nuclear war in a crisis. Another commentator, and listen, nothing happens in the Russian press without the Russians approving of it. They intimated that, Romania, I forgot the exact words, but things like, Romania could end up like a glowing ash, and it could end up, not doing very well because of this installing this missile defense shield that the U.S. has paid for and put in Romania. And so it is not a good situation. Tensions are rising, not falling. Also, the Royal Air Force, the RAF, scrambled a couple of jets as some Russian aircraft that weren't, using the right transponders and putting their signals out were basically probing the Baltic states. And so, more tension there, and we have these probes and this incursions, and Russian jets, flying close to Navy ships, and Russian jets flying close to aircraft that is doing intelligence work. That's supposedly in international airspace. Very tense situation right now. That's just that. Meanwhile, there's a new face-off in the South China Sea. As if we don't have enough problems. It's between China and the U.S. Navy. U.S. says China's making, quote, excessive maritime claims. You're talking about building these islands in the South China Sea. It's hundreds of miles from the mainland coast, and yet China says that's their property, even though these islands are in this area in the South China Sea, 600 some odd square miles, disputed territory between China and Japan and the Philippines and Vietnam, all disputed this area. The area is also very important because there are major shipping lanes there. And, the U.S. says, talks about this excessive international, the excessive maritime claims. And China says that, building its islands is just fine. And it says the presence of U.S. naval ships, represents or basically threatens its sovereignty. It also says navigation, this is China talking, navigation is not being interfered with. The U.S. sent a guided missile destroyer within 12 nautical miles of China's disputed man-made islands. China says U.S. action was, and here we have it again, a, quote, threat to peace, end quote. Also, Australia has sent a naval ship to back up the U.S. So this is getting, tense. That doesn't mean that war is imminent. It's going to break out, over the weekend, but it's tense. And you can find that all over the planet. Let's move on over to Iraq. ISIS has been on a bombing campaign just this past week. I think they set off 3 big bombs. One bomb that was in a vehicle killed 80 people and wounded dozens and dozens of more people. ISIS is definitely taking responsibility and claiming that it did do the bombings. Now, ISIS has lost some territory, lost some ground in the last few months. And this is how ISIS is responding. There is no end to the bloodshed there as well. This is just there's just war and rumors of war. It seems to me all around the planet, and none of it looks like it's on the glide path to settling down, to being settled, to be put on the back burner, to simmer down. So everything is boiling hotter and hotter and hotter. until I guess the frog will boil out of the pot at one point. On the economic front, things are not getting better. In fact, all the headlines seem to show things are getting worse. And you know, it's bad when it starts bubbling out in the mainstream press. And here's just a set of headlines I got from Zero Hedge. I like Zero Hedge. I think they do a good job. But you know, this is a guy by the name of Milton Berg, big shot financier, money manager. You know, a financial guy. He said we are on the cusp of a 30-year bear market. Breathe that in, folks. This is not going to get people to buy stocks and bonds. He's worried about stocks and bonds. This Milton Berg. And that is, you know, this week, Nordstrom plummets after reporting terrible earnings and slashing guidance. Here's another Apple headline, very negative. Apple tumbles after a report of 70 to 80% plunge in iPhone chip shipments. And we're not talking about the iPhone 6. We're talking about the spanking brand new iPhone 7. That the chip shipments are off 70 to 80%. What does that tell you about future sales, future book of business? And this is what it looks like in Venezuela, a socialist country. Margaret Thatcher, the former Prime Minister of UK, you know, famously said, socialism is great until you run out of other people's money. Well, here's what it looks like when you run out of other people's money. Raw Venezuela, that's the title. Looter burned alive while a street filled with people killing animals for food. That's how bad it is getting. And if you look around the globe, and you look at places like Puerto Rico. Now, I don't think they're you know, basically setting fire in the streets or eating animals just yet, but they're in the process of defaulting on their debt. Now, either the Fed or somebody prints a ton of money or gives them a ton of money, or they're going to have to cut way back. They default on that debt. That's a big problem. That's the same thing with municipality like Detroit. You know, look what happens when Detroit, they can't just go down to the basement at City Hall and print some money. I talked to my friend Gregory Mannarino, and he says, you know, this is a terrible economy. This is what he said, a Hoover-Bama economy. A Hoover-Bama economy. And, you know, Herbert Hoover was the last president that had less than 3% growth while he was president. Mannarino points out, says, well, Obama's the first president since Herbert Hoover, and of course he was the Depression president. It's all started under his administration. He's the first president that's had 3%, sub 3% growth. And I said, wow, well, back in Hoover's day, you could believe the numbers. And you know, now, you know, 3%, is it really 3% or is it 0% or is it negative percent? If you factor in real inflation, if you do the numbers correctly like John Williams would do. And then Mannarino tells me, well, you know, the money was real back then too. And he says, hey, and you know, the bread lines would be much longer. I mean, what do you think food stamps are? Do you imagine if we had to put 40, 45 or 46 million people in line to buy food? That wouldn't be a good visual. I thought, wow, good idea. Also, Mannarino says that, you know, you saw the reports about how people are leaving the 10 biggest cities in droves. They are leaving. He says, I think this is just the beginning of the end of the middle class. And you know what? I don't care what they say about the middle class. They don't care about you. They don't care about the poor. They don't care about the middle class, the upper middle class. All they care about is the very top. That's all they care about. They say they care about the middle class, and then we have Obamacare, which incidentally, the Obama administration just lost a second big ruling in the case that was in federal court. The judge just ruled, said you can't give money to people to buy Obamacare insurance. You can't fund people without Congress weighing in. And the Republicans, under John Boehner, they started this lawsuit and said, hey, you're overstepping your bounds. You are doing the function of Congress. You are basically paying for things without running it through Congress and getting the consent of Congress. And they've won round two. Of course, the mainstream press says, well, it'll be overturned. Well, you listen, that's the second case that the Republicans have won. That makes you know, an overturn on appeal gets much more difficult. Every time the case goes up, overturns on appeal get much more difficult. And incidentally, Carl Denninger came on here years ago and said Obamacare is going to kill the economy. It's going to be a boat anchor on the economy. And sure enough, he's right. I had a huge increase in 2016, as many people did. My insurance now has doubled since President Obama took office, and they're talking about another big increase in 2017. And then meanwhile, all these insurance companies are either dropping out or the exchanges are going bankrupt. They're losing tens of millions, if not billions of dollars with this scam. Thank you, Jonathan Gruber, for the scam, the lie, the huge concocted lie by Democratic leadership. Now we know it was a huge lie by Democratic leadership. Obamacare, and it's ruining the economy. It's one of the many things ruining the economy. Speaking of the nasty mainstream press, or let me say this, stupid mainstream press. Ben Rhodes, a top White House advisor, is talking about how he spoofed the press and basically made an echo chamber and wrote the narrative for the Iran nuclear deal, which is no deal. As I predicted more than a year ago, there would be no deal, and without any signatures, there's no deal. Kerry didn't even understand. He was doing a military application to curtail its military application for its nuclear program, and when it came time, and I heard him say this, came time in Congress for him to explain how they're going to be inspecting the nuclear sites, he said, I don't have it. That's a side deal. I thought that was a main deal. I don't have anything to do with that. The UN's doing that. Scam. And now we have Ben Rhodes basically saying, yeah, they wrote a false narrative, which the White House denies. But it's a scam. Where's the paperwork? No signatures, no paperwork. The Secretary of State looks like a buffoon when he doesn't even understand the main point was a curtailment of the military programs. I don't know anything about that. Scam, because it was a scam. And now you have Ben Rhodes pulling a Jonathan Gruber and saying he's so proud of how he scammed the press. And the press is only mad because they look buffoonish. They look as buffoonish as John Kerry because they got sped, the spoonfuls of absolutely BS, and they printed it, and now they look like the lapdogs that they are, and they are lapdogs. What did the president say at the White House Correspondents' Dinner? Thank you for being by my side. He should have been making jokes about, you guys are tough on me, but no, thank you for helping me, or whatever he said. Thank you for standing by my side. Standing by your side. And now this. So now we have the Washington Post, which is owned by Jeff Bezos. He's a Democratic donor. And now we have the Washington Post, which is another lopsided, far left wackadoodle, unfair, biased, not even a news organization, just a spin organization. Here we have Woodward and Bernstein fame. Washington Post assigns 20 reporters to dig into Trump's past. Oh yeah, 20 reporters to dig into Trump's past. So, how much do you think they're going to find on Donald Trump, who's been a public figure just about since he's, 20? How much dirt do you think they're going to find? And so they have a maybe story, a fantasy story, this one, and then the real story of the Democratic frontrunner. I could not make this up, folks. Democratic frontrunner under an active FBI investigation, whose top aides, Aberdeen and Mills, were just interviewed by the FBI. Silence. Cheryl Mills had to get up and leave. She was so flustered from the interview. It's against the law to lie in an interview with the FBI, in an interrogation. It's against the law. This criminal investigation, and even Hillary Clinton herself is going to be interviewed, and you think they put a few reporters on that? They have something on that every day? Oh, no. No. They ignore that, but they're going to assign 20 people to dig into Donald Trump. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. That's fair. I've been complaining about how the USA Today has been ignoring the Hillary Clinton story, and here it is. Little story right here, just so they can say, we did it. FBI probe on the Clintons has no external deadline. In other words, James Comey, the head of the FBI, is telling people that nobody's going to push me. I'm going to do this investigation. He also said he's not going to give anybody any special treatment, so we'll see. People like Larry Nichols says they won't indict her, but I don't know, folks. Just ponder this. I mean, she just lost in West Virginia, one of the bluest of blue states. She won back in 2008, beat Obama there. Now she loses to Bernie Sanders by a wide margin. She lost every county in West Virginia. She won every county in 2008. She lost every county to Bernie Sanders in 2016. She won it back in 2008. You tell me how weak she is coming off. And now the Clinton campaign is saying, well, we might not win any other primaries. You think the Democrats are feeling good about Hill? Do you think the Democrats are feeling good about her? And then listen, they have it rigged with the super rigging delegates to just give her votes, even though she didn't earn them. I mean, the race is tight compared to what Trump is doing. He's trouncing everybody. There's only been really two people in the campaign. Yeah, there's a few others earlier, but it was just her and Sanders. Trump's had all kinds of contenders splitting the vote. So, they may either allow some of the indictments to go through. I mean, she had a private server under the Espionage Act. That is in gross negligence. I don't know what is. I called USA Today and told them, and this is before this headline came out, I called up the executive assistant of the president. And I said, you know how biased you guys look? And I quoted time after time after time, said, you guys didn't bother doing Cheryl Mills being interviewed, Huma Abedin being interviewed. At the time, I don't think Mills was interviewed, but Abedin, you didn't cover the story of the guy that got, from the Department of Justice, immunity, the person that set up the server. You don't think that's a story? You don't think you should be having teams of people covering the Democratic front-runner under an FBI investigation? I don't think that's ever happened before. That's not a story. But 20 people on Trump for an imaginary story, Washington Post. Oh, yeah. Yeah, let's go find some dirt. Yeah. Hey, Woodward, you think that's fair? Really? You think that's unbiased? So I talking to the guy, and I mentioned, you had the Guccifer. This is last week. I didn't have a weekly news wrap-up because I had Larry Nichols, and I just let that run. But last week, so I call up and said, you had the Guccifer story. This is the guy extradited to the U.S. NBC sat on the Guccifer story, the guy that hacked into Hillary Clinton's server. He's bragging about how easy it was to hack into the server and how he hacked in there and found, 10 other people and their IP addresses that have also hacked into it. Tell me that the Russians and the Chinese and the Iranians and the Europeans and anybody else didn't have access to all that information. And remember, folks, Hillary Clinton sits in the middle. She interacts with the president, the Pentagon, the NSA, the CIA, all of her offices around the world. There's 70,000 employees. There's unbelievable amount of information passing in and out of this position. How is that not gross negligence? Nobody had a clearance. Just that part. Forget about everything else. And I was talking to the USA Today guy and saying, you guys go out of your way time after time after time after time. I said, here's an example. I said, Indiana, Donald Trump kills the competition. He basically secures the nomination by winning. And what do you guys do the next day? You put the loser up. You put Ted Cruz up. And where's Donald Trump? Where do you put Donald Trump? I said a little 2x2 picture right underneath there. He just knocked out everybody. And are you guys trying to sell papers? I said, this is too stupid to be stupid. You're trying to say the least you can, so you got the loser up? You're trying to sell papers by putting the loser up? And I kid you not, the executive's assistant to the president of the company says, yeah, we got a lot of criticism about that. They're digging their own grave. The mainstream press is more worried about propelling a political idea than selling newspapers and getting clicks on their website. And all these people working for these stooges at the top, all these people are going to be out of jobs. They are digging their own graves. They are on the path, they are on the way to the dustpan of history. They are on the path to total irrelevance. Total irrelevance. I couldn't believe the executive assistant to the president of the company said, yeah, I know. We got a lot of criticism about that. Outrageous. Really, totally outrageous. Don't believe anything you hear unless you independently check it from the mainstream media. And don't think that all the news is being reported if you read the USA Today and the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, because it's not. One last thing, I'm going to be changing things up a little bit. I'm going to try to drop some big interviews, and if I get a big interview and something is very compelling, like Larry Nichols or Rob Kirby or something like that, I'm going to opt not to do the weekly news wrap-up. I know a lot of you folks thought there's something happened to me or there's something wrong. I wasn't sick. Nothing happened to me. Nobody tried to hurt me. I just wanted to let a big interview breathe and run. And I did that with Larry Nichols, and I did that with Rob Kirby, and I'll likely do it again, but not this week. This week, I have another big interview, but here's the weekly news wrap-up, and I'm promoting V, the Guerrilla Economist, who's going to talk about martial law and how he thinks that's a myth. He's going to talk about, the big banks and the economy and what the triggers are to cause a collapse and that it's real. V, the Guerrilla Economist at roguemoney.net will be the early Sunday release. I'm Greg Hunter. Thank you so much for supporting me with your comments and donations. Those donations help us out. Remember, fear not. Protect yourself physically, mentally, and above all, spiritually. Fear not. God the Father is firmly in charge.